Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and yes, I'm still drinking my morning coffee, getting ready to cook my breakfast, eat, get my squat on, and thought I would do another informative video this morning. And no, this isn't going to be current events. I'm going to do a current events later because I'm not going to really trash talk or get into any of that. I just kind of want to discuss a video that OmarIsuf did. I'll link it down below. It was sent to me by a friend yesterday. Went to check it out, and of course the person was sending it to me not because of the main content, but because that Omar said the bench press doesn't necessarily grow everyone's chest, blah blah blah, which is something I disagree with. There's plenty of experts in biomechanics who disagree with that. The bench press should grow your chest. You cannot remove the pecs as a primary mover on the bench press. It's a big heavy barbell movement. Usually if people struggle with chest development on the bench press, it's the way that they're performing the exercise. They're finding a way to reduce chest involvement. That involves partial reps, bouncing it off the chest, too much touch and go. Whereas, and I tell guys, look, even a closed grip bench press will build your pecs. If you come all the way down, you sink it into your chest, you don't use too big of an arch, and you sink that bar into your chest and you pause it. Like, I've had tons of followers who come in and say, wow, you're right. I just used to say the bench press doesn't grow my chest. It only grows my delts and my triceps, and my chest is always lagging. I spent 6 months taking your advice of actually pausing it, sinking the bar into my chest, keeping my scapula back at the bottom, sinking that bar in and pausing it, then exploding. And they're like, yeah, my chest actually started growing finally. Thank you. And in fact, now my pause bench is stronger than my touch and go. So you get a lot of that. And in fact, you go look at powerlifting meets, you go look into, you get out of the lighter weight classes, even in the drug tested ones, guys usually have pretty solid pectorals who bench a lot of weight. Why? Because if you want to be a raw power lifter, you have to get maximal muscle involvement to lift maximum weight. If you're going to lift the heaviest weight possible, yeah, you do stuff to cut range of motion, but you have to get as many muscle fibers recruited as you can for the range of motion that you're going to use. And that means that you really need your pecs, your front delts, your triceps, everything firing as hard as possible, or else you're leaving 30 or 40 pounds off the platform that you could be eating. So you need to train them to do that, which means that your pecs do have to get heavily involved if you want a legitimately strong bench press, right? Now, some people just are not genetically prone due to their structure to having massive pecs, and that's fine. But that's not necessarily the fault of the exercise. Those are people who are probably going to struggle due to the number of muscle fibers they have, the size of their rib cage. Structural issues are going to make it difficult for those people to grow a chest even with other exercises. But no, I think that the bench press is a fine chest builder for everyone. It may not give you a bodybuilder quality chest depending upon your genetics, but for some guys with the genetics for that, it'll actually get them there by itself. I know it's a great chest exercise. The pecs are a primary mover. You can't really remove them. People actually seem to work really hard to make it not a chest exercise, which is the funny thing. Then they complain their pecs don't grow, and they went through a lot of trouble to try to take their chest out of the exercise instead of using their pecs to explode the weight off the bottom, which is what you're supposed to do. Now, as far as the other stuff goes, he started talking about back exercises, and this is one of those things that I always find interesting, because when you put people on most strength-based programs, they don't really struggle with back development. Surprisingly enough, most of the guys I meet who struggle with overall back development, it's people who are trying to do bodybuilding style training, whereas you don't see back development problems in powerlifters, Olympic lifters, things like that, like weightlifters. Most strength athletes have big, well-developed backs top to bottom. It's more bodybuilders who struggle with it, which is ironic because, again, in their particular competitive endeavor, not having a developed back will get you scored down real bad. And I think what people need to remember here, when we start talking about back development, there is no one good exercise. This is where I'm going to disagree with what Omar had to say. I'm going to completely disagree. Now, I'm not going to say that chin-ups and pull-ups aren't amazing lat exercises or they're not great exercises. I think every novice lifter needs to master the weighted chin-up. Right? How many times do I say that? All of you guys need to master the weighted chin-up early on in your training. I think it's a very important base building exercise. So when I come here and say this, I'm not knocking the exercise. You guys know I value this exercise. I put it in programs. I'm a big fan of the weighted chin-up. I'm a big fan of the exercise, right? We can't deny that. Let's get that out of the way. However, for overall back development, no, I don't think it's the best exercise for overall back development, because most of the work on a chin up or a pull up, it's a great arm exercise. It's a fantastic lat exercise. It's good for getting that width in your back because the lats tend to make your back wider the more developed they are. But there are people who don't do any direct lat work, who do other strength type endeavors, who don't do any rowing, any chin-ups, any pulling, who still have pretty complete back development because of the variety of other big lifts and lifts off the floor and everything that they do. So you don't see those deficiencies there. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that if you want to build your back as big as possible that you need to skip out on the lat exercises. So let's make that point clear. What I'm saying is that if you're on a well-rounded strength program, you are probably going to have a well-developed back, whether you do direct, what we think of as direct lat work, or not. But the caveat being, if you really, really want a big back, you need to include the lat work. And that's the way to look at it. It comes back to specificity of training. But when you start comparing overall back development, it's exactly the problem. You see some guys who do just the chin-ups and pull-ups, and they don't have the complete back development that you're looking for. Because there are other exercises, even big compound movements, that work the traps better, middle traps and upper traps, the rear delts, the thoracic erectors, the spinal erectors, all of that stuff. That's where you get that thick three-dimensional look in your back. Well, start what lifts hit those things. It's not chin-ups and pull-ups. Rows actually work most of those things better than chin-ups and pull-ups. Chin-ups and pull-ups, I think we can agree, probably better for biceps. You probably do get a little more lat recruitment in those because of the plane of pull. But if we're talking about complete back development, they simply do not hit the traps or the rear delts as well. They don't. In fact, as far as even getting rear delt involvement, which is again part of that pull upper back, the more bent over you are on a row, the more involved they are. And again, the more vertical you get, the less rear delt involvement you get. But it's the same thing with trapezius as far as middle traps and stuff to some extent. But if you go look, there are guys out there who don't do those who actually have pretty well developed backs. There are guys who run stuff like 5-3-1 who actually get a decently developed back with, if they don't even do rows or chins, because again, they're putting a heavy focus on the squat, the deadlift, the standing press, the bench press. Now we can argue, and again, people argue against this, the bench press probably not particularly good lat exercise. I think that's a given. But as far as your total back development, the other three exercises all contribute enormously. Absolutely enormously. The deadlift does grow the lats. It will grow your thoracic erectors, spinal erectors, traps, all of those better than just the chin-up or the pull-up will. The standing press, performed correctly, works the rear delts, works the upper traps. It does involve the lats to some extent. The squat will involve the lats to some extent. And again, people argue that who don't understand it, but if you look at the nature of the thoracico-lumbar sling, if you are squatting and deadlifting really heavy, your lats are going to grow. So the take-home here is these things work. Oh, what about Olympic lifters? Oh, a lot of Olympic lifters row. A lot of them do pull-ups. A lot of them don't. They tend to have a well-developed back. All the snatching, all the cleaning they do, all this heavy lifts and explosive lifts from the floor tend to develop their whole back. And then a lot of times for hypertrophy work, they do stuff like snatch grip, deadlifts, high pulls. They're going to tend to develop their entire back here without doing what you think of as traditional just lat work. Because people need to remember there's more to the back than just the lat. So I'm going to disagree here. Now what's interesting is that the two examples he used Vitruvian physique. And when I see Vitruvian physique, he's by far not the most developed back of any natty I know. He doesn't. Now, the guy has pretty good back development. I'm not going to say he doesn't, because he does, particularly for a natty. He's got decent leg development, or total back development. But the guy also competes in powerlifting. He's hit over a 500 raw deadlift in comp. I don't know exactly what he hit, but if I recall, I know he deadlifts more than 500 in comp, right? In addition to pull-ups. They say, well, he used all these pull-ups, but he does all these other lifts. He squats and deadlifts heavy. See where we're going with that? Those exercises. I know the guy does standing presses, right? He's doing these other lifts. It's not just that brought it up. And then he used Alex. I don't know why he used Alex. Like, I don't look at Alex and say, wow, that's fantastic back development. I'm not saying he has bad back development, but what I'm saying is, and this is structural, this actually isn't a flaw in his training per se. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that out. I like to pick on Alex, But in this case, the guy's actually pretty strong on weighted pull-ups. He's almost as strong as I am when it comes to total weight moved, right? His 1 rep max on a pull-up from a dead hang is pretty close. It's almost as high as what my dead hang chin-up max is that I've done on camera multiple times, right? It's pretty close. It's like, I think, within 20 pounds. He has actually a smaller back than I would expect for what he lifts on those lifts. Now, why is that? It's because he has a fairly narrow bone structure. That's one reason from the front sometimes, because he's done some trap work, why his traps look kind of big. It's because he's narrower, so the traps tend to look bigger. But if you notice, you put him next to Omar, his traps aren't as big as Omar's, right? So, but he has back development, but he also does other lifts. And I would say, if anything, probably the thing that's held him back is the fact that he quit doing all this pulls from the floor. He started messing with all this accommodating resistance, rack pulls, everything else. I feel like that probably stopped some of his back development. That had he stuck with conventional deadlifts off the floor, his back would probably be more developed than it is now. So if you guys were to ask me at the end of the day, if I had to pick one exercise to guarantee maximum back development, not the lat, your entire back, I don't know that I would. I don't look at it and say, because all the exercises that do help build your back, different aspects of it to a certain greater or lesser extent, I consider to be essential exercises. The squat, the deadlift, the standing press, these are exercises you need to be doing. These are exercises you need to be doing. But if someone were to say, well, you can only do one back exercise, what would it be? I would, for hypertrophy, I would probably say a deficit deadlift. Deficit conventional deadlift or a snatch grip deadlift. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. If you're trying to develop 100% of your back and you wanted to build a really big back by using only one exercise when all these important exercises contribute tremendously, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you're going to do that. I don't think it's going to work particularly well. Because like I said, the chin-up, pull-up, both of those, yeah, they're great lat and bicep exercises. But as far as total back development, they don't actually work the entire back itself particularly well, just the lats. Every one of the other muscles involved, there are a lot of other movements that are almost essential movements that work on better. And we kind of come back to the point, I was just puzzled with the Vitruvian physique guy being used because I know he's competed in drug-tested powerlifting also. He's not just a bodybuilding guy, he has competed in powerlifting, and I know he deadlifts over 500 pounds in comp. So again, I'm not really understanding why we're going here with the pull-ups. They're just one tool in the toolbox that he's used. And you guys have to look at it that way. It's never about that one exercise you do. It is about the totality of your training when you're talking about reaching any given set of goals. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.